of the Metropolitan Planning Area. This meeting will be conducted in compliance with the Nebraska statutes of the Open Meeting Act. For reference, the Open Meeting Act is posted on the west wall of the boardroom. Liz, did you want to take roll call?
Supervisor Scott Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Roger Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Rusty Height. Mayor Doug Kindig.
Here.
Commissioner David Klug. Mayor Gene Stother. Mayor Matt Walsh. Mayor Angie Winquist. Present.
Agenda item B, can I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Second.
I'm here too, Lou.
Oh.
Oh,
Just put me down.
and
I may
Russ,
be asleep, but I am here.
God, Rowe.
very good. Did you get that motion second, Liz?
Okay.
You want to take a roll call, Liz?
Bell.
Aye.
Garcia.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Kindig.
Yes. Agenda item C, if I could have a motion to approve the board minutes from the January 23rd, 25 meeting.
Second row.
Is there any questions or discussion by the board? If not, Liz?
Bell.
Aye.
Garcia.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Kindig.
Yes. Agenda item D is the agency reports. Mike?
Sure. So a couple of items to update you on. We talked about this at our last meeting. We had to reschedule our first elected and appointed officials training for Nebraska because of the weather, or for Iowa rather, for the weather that occurred about a week ago. And so we've moved that one to the 6th of March. Our Nebraska training is actually here in this room tonight. If you know anybody who's an elected or appointed official and like to attend, please just have them register. But you see here, it's going to go from 5 to 8 in both and kind of go through sort of running effective meetings, Open Meetings Act principles, just kind of things to expect in those roles. And so either as a refresher or for people who are new to those kinds of roles, it's a good opportunity. We encourage you to take advantage of those.
How many do you have registered for tonight? Do you know?
22,
Okay,
I believe.
a good number. Okay,
A lot of smaller grass.
excellent.
Yep. Christine, if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, I have this. I didn't even realize that. I only have 2 slides, so I don't have to do that again. Just a couple of other things on meetings. So again, some weather impacts here for Safe Streets and Roads for All, but we talked a little bit about the draft plan, presenting that to the public. You can see a number of meetings here over the next few weeks, including some this week, one at Barbara White's Community Engagement Center on Monday, one today, Council Bluffs Public Library on Tuesday, and then one more next week on Monday, the rescheduled one up at Miller Park here in Omaha. And so good attendance so far, interesting kind of feedback on those to date, but more to come, and we'll kind of wrap all that into the final plan recommendation when we bring that back to the board for approval. So a couple of board members and a couple of other elected officials from the MAPA region joined us out at the NARC conference, and I put together just a brief summary of what we heard out in DC, kind of both from the conference itself and from our visits up on Capitol Hill. A few takeaways. I tried to kind of capture it thematically, but a lot of our focus was on some of the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act. What we heard on some of the agency review from the executive orders is that's still ongoing and more to come. And that continues through this week. We heard a lot about reconciliation, and so some of the budget related things that you hear going on in the House and now in the Senate related to kind of the lapsing tax cuts and where they're going to be looking for that. One thing that we heard loud and clear during the conference was that one thing that nobody stood up and said was really important last go round were these state and local tax exempt bonds for infrastructure. And so when they're looking for large offsets in that process, that's one that stands out. And so what a number of national organizations did is put together a website where communities and other entities can submit the bond-funded projects. So NIFA has gone in and put all of their bond-funded projects in there where those tax-exempt bonds and the ability to sale those in the private marketplace gives them kind of a benefit in terms of those types of programs. And so that opportunity is really to, if you're interested, work with your staff to put in projects there to kind of carry that message about why those are so important. So really interesting piece that we hadn't heard about. We made sure to address that in our visits on the Hill. Heard a lot about transportation reauthorization. I'm not going to read through everything that's here, but a lot of emphasis on finding safety and efficiency in transportation programs and really kind of reducing duplication. And that overall, whatever comes out of transportation reauthorization, which is probably about a year or more out, as that work starts in the Senate, they are not anticipating transferring money from the general fund at this time. So the IIJA was much larger, had a large amount of kind of one-time advanced appropriations. And those advanced appropriations are not really in the cards this time. So it's going to be really looking for a sustainable solution to the Highway Trust Fund, which has eluded Congress for about 20 years. And then also really trying to match that with looking at some of these formula programs, these discretionary programs, and trying to find the right mix of those going forward. Heard a lot about the NEPA. This is really around the courts, a lot of court challenges and changes to NEPA and review. And so, you know, that's a process when we go through the federal aid process. That's something that is a real kind of a step in the road for larger, more complex infrastructure projects. It takes a long time. And so as those things change, we'll continue to update TTAC and other members who kind of closer to that, but just wanted you to know that large scale changes have been occurring through the courts on that. And then finally, the Economic Development Administration, MAPA is an economic development district. We saw that the Economic Development Administration was reauthorized in December. And so now it's really working with Congress to make sure that funds continue to be appropriated. That reauthorization allowed for our funding as a development district to increase to $200,000. And so again, national associations are working really closely with Congress to talk about the role that EDDs have, what programs are working, where those opportunities might be to make those programs more successful. And so again, really interesting, I think, updates. Supervisor Belt was there, Commissioner Garcia's colleague, Commissioner Fahey was with us, Jacqueline Morrison from the mayor's office. And then I'm forgetting one. Susan Miller, thank you, Scott's colleague on the Potawatomi County Supervisors. So it was a good group. And Supervisor, I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Well, yeah, the highlight was the Super Bowl party. All were enjoying themselves at the Super Bowl party. But we were having our Super Bowl party at my next stop, National Association of Counties. I'll be there tomorrow, so they were gracious enough to let us have their facility and have a Super Bowl party.
Yeah.
I don't know if they provided the food and drinks, but
They did not.
if they did, God bless.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. So we had a little snowstorm, and if it snows more than an inch in the DC district area, all the prices on transportation double.
Mhm.
So if you go out and then it snows while you're out eating, then you come back out, you better be ready to pay
Mhm.
$50.
You get halfway home.
$50
Yeah.
out of $20. You know how to drive in. It's really you know, and then I got my girl to pull up the per diem sheets for out there, which I didn't have to worry about, and I probably will this time. And then they think you can get a breakfast for $23. You might get a cup of coffee and maybe a donut. Lunch, $26. Good luck. Unless you like to eat something I don't care for. And then $38 for supper. So $5 for incidental expense. That won't even get you a cab ride to the corner. Well, welcome to this DC and have a nice day.
Yeah. And so one more item just related to the Executive Directors Board. We actually have new staff. So Latifa Morrow has joined our Transportation and Data team. Latifa, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself, talk about a little bit about your experience and introduce yourself.
I say I love the environmental journey, so yeah.
Thank you, Latifa.
Welcome.
And
One other thing, those bonding handouts you gave or had,
Mhm.
did everybody get one of those here?
the bonding handouts, one of these.
No, you had two shiny bonding
Oh, you're talking about the folders.
Yeah.
No, but we can get those. We tried to print them out. It didn't look like they printed out correctly, but we can make sure everybody gets the PDF of that, but yeah.
Well, they should have that if they run into their
Mhm.
congressional people, because if that gets messed up, we're gonna be paying double bonding rates, then
Mhm.
nobody's gonna wanna buy the bonds.
Yeah, it's a real advantage for communities that use debt financing. I mean, it really is the only thing that makes that work at the local level. So, yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
Those two, whatever you wanna call them,
Sure.
brochures, whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then moving on to item B is just our annual survey. You know, I've normally put you through everything with a slide deck, but here I just kind of put together a one pager of kind of what we heard from that member survey. We had about 20 responses this year. That's down a little bit from last year, but really kind of average for what we see. We tried to make it as easy to do, but you know, we also are going out and talking to community members throughout the year to kind of affirm our priorities. But really what I think you'll find in here is just really an affirmation of what we're already kind of prioritizing and working on. A lot of affirmation for some of the work that MAPA does, bringing regional partners together and kind of these multi-jurisdictional conversations. And when we asked about professional development and training and peer exchange opportunities, a lot of support from our members for more of those opportunities. And that's been an area that we've been focusing on. We're going to continue to do that. And then really just try to work on some of these individual project recommendations, which I think is always a good amount of work for us to look at this time of year. So I won't go through all of that. If you come to Council of Officials in March, you'll see the kind of the broader detail, how it ties to our work program. But I wanted you to have this just in case you had any questions about that annual survey.
Any questions for Mike? If not, agenda item E is public comments. If anyone wishes to address the board. Liz, did we have any requests?
No.
Very good, thank you. Agenda item F, if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. No. Second. Walsh.
And is there any discussion or questions by the board? If not, Liz?
Belt,
Aye.
Garcia,
Yes.
Pike, Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Hindig.
Yes. Item G is old business. Item number 1 is a resolution 2025 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment number 4. Court?
So the first 3 projects on the list are the City of Omaha projects that have to do with creek resurfacing. Those 3 projects are related. So we're adding in a project for the 2027 major creek resurfacing. The other 2 projects are basically placeholder funding, and that funding is being rolled into that 2027 major creek resurfacing. So there's a little over $8 million in resurfacing that will be done under that project. Nebraska DOT, they're shortening the length of one of their projects so they can fit it in this fiscal year. So they're reducing the size and scope of that project, and they're reducing the funding from about $14 million to about $3.5 million. And in the City of Omaha, we're adding a planning project. So they want to do planning for North 19th Street, streetcar planning. So they're basically looking at transit-oriented development along that street. So we're adding that to the TIP, about $150,000 discretionary funds. Questions? Pretty short TIP amendment. I would like to add that one of the things that we brought up at TTAC related to kind of what Mike was talking about in his executive director report, that the process for approving the TIP and state TIP amendments, all of these will need to go to headquarters, FHWA, USDOT headquarters to be approved. It won't just be the division offices, so it could take a little bit longer to get these projects approved in the TIP and in the state TIP. We're not entirely certain what the impact will be yet. We did kind of discuss that a little bit at TTAC and let everybody know that there could be impact to delivering these projects, but we're not 100% sure. We'll have to see how it goes. This is the first time we've seen TIP amendment under this kind of process.
Does anybody have questions for court? If not, would I have a motion?
Motion. Second, Bill.
Is there further discussion or questions by the board? If not, Liz?
Belt,
Aye.
Garcia,
Yes.
Pike, Rowe,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Kendig.
Yes. Item two is the resolution 2025-13. It's the regional truck and travel time performance measures. Jim?
Good afternoon. Last month I talked to you about the safety and condition, the truck and travel time liability, or third, the three federal, transportation performance measures, and we have historically set this measure and wanted to come with you with an updated change for the final, period in our 4-year targets. So as a reminder, we set targets on 3 different, measures. We look at the interstate for 2 things: one, all vehicles, so passenger vehicles and trucks. We also take a look at truck and travel time. And we look at our non-interstate national highway system. So show those here quickly for you on the map. The blue being those 2 interstate measures, and the green are the roadways, which are measured on these. And so one thing to note that non-interstate national highway system does change. It has some variability, but overall, the data set is, we're gaining a better understanding of what that data tells us, and happy to have been able to monitor these performance measures. I'll go through them quickly. I will state with TTAC did recommend approval to the board of changes. We do look at them, they're an annual measure. They do provide us input at the monthly period, but really we're just looking at those portions of the network in which travel is unreliable. That's measured by travel time for a particular segment, basically a percentile. And so there's that, when you're going to work and everything's going fine, that would be one measure. Then we have really kind of your worst travel day of the month, and that would be what they deem to be congested. So interstate travel time reliability, generally we've been very high. We don't experience a lot of unreliability on our network, and for some reason, unfortunately, 2024, we did measure that. So this is one of the 2 measures we're recommending to change to those targets, just to more accurate targets we're experiencing. We did end up with interstate travel time reliability 90% of person miles traveled. For the non-interstate, this is one that's been trending upward. This was a little surprising as well. I think as most people would travel around, they would question whether or not nearly 97% of roadways are reliable from a travel time perspective. We're excited to take a deeper look at this too. 2 of our recent hires in the transportation. Take a look at what's really a big data set of the speed network to better understand it and to communicate that with our jurisdiction. So we've made no changes to this target. And finally, truck and travel time reliability. This is just a ratio we're not measuring. People experiencing reliable travel, but this is just, again, looking at that ratio of kind of a free flow, good travel as opposed to congested. And we will be making a change to that measure as well. So in summary, again, being a 4-year target, take a look at the 2-year period. We're recommending a change to the interstate travel time reliability, basically a slight reduction to 95.2% from 98%, and raising that truck travel time reliability index, again, recognizing that it's a little bit more worse travel than what we had expected. 1.3. I will note too, those met target better than baseline for all of these measures. We didn't meet the target as an MPO. There's nothing punitive with that. It's allowed for us to use it as a planning tool. So once we have this information communicated to our departments of transportation and the respective federal highway. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions or discussion for Jim? Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve?
Yes. Second. No. Long.
Further discussion or questions? Liz?
Bell.
Aye.
Garcia.
Yes.
Ike.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Kendig.
Yes. Item H, under new business, item number 1 is our 2024 audited financial statements. Matt, did you want to kick this off, or I believe Edie's got a presentation? Or, yeah, update, correct.
Yeah, it should be the purchase,
Purchase.
H1 is a purchase.
Purchase of board to consider immigration legal services.
That's not on the agenda I gave.
It's not what I got. I was so excited to listen to you, Matt, that I just went right to you.
Short speech, I promise. Hands off.
Let's go ahead and we can go with Matt and then I'll go back to that, okay?
So, this year we're about to present to you our
Okay, I'll get it. Okay, we're good.
2024 audited financial statements, and we have representative from our auditors team, Darren Ostin from I Bailey. He'll give a
Oh, that's right.
short presentation. because we
I
have a
can-
very clean audit.
Thank you very much. So yes, Darren Olson, I'm a partner in the Omaha office of I Bailey. This is our third year providing audit services to you, and I just want to thank you for that continued opportunity. I will certainly enjoy working with you. We are 1 month ahead of where we were in getting the audit done last year, so made a lot of progress as far as that goes. I want to thank Matt and Amanda and their team for all their efforts and cooperation to get us all the information to be able to complete the audit and work time in that aspect. We met with the finance committee on February 19th to review the drafts and go over the audit results. And so we're just going to give you a high level overview here of those results today. You want to go to the next slide real quick. So yeah, we're going to go through our required communications, which is those communications required to be presented to those charged with governance in accordance with our audit standard. And then we'll just touch on our audit reporting results. You want to go to the next slide, please. So our required communications first is the audits were conducted in accordance with our generally accepted auditing standards. And then since you do expend federal awards over $750,000, the audit is required to be conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. And then in accordance with the uniform guidance, which is basically a compliance audit in testing compliance with those federal award requirements. And so in accordance with government auditing standards, we report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations that affect financial statements and financial statement presentation. And then the uniform guidance reporting, we test compliance and internal control over compliance with the major program requirements for the major programs that are selected in the audit. Our responsibility under our standards is to plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. We did, as Matt said, had a clean audit, a clean, unmodified opinion. And then we express an opinion on compliance with those major federal programs. And we didn't have any findings there, and I'll touch on that slide. I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Significant risks. So as part of our risk assessment process, we look at areas that may be susceptible to audit risk, and we design and focus our audit procedures to reduce the risk in those areas to a low level. And so I've listed the significant risks to you. Management overriding controls and revenue recognition are pretty much risks in every single audit. Where can management influence the results of the financial statements? And then is revenue recorded in a proper period and classified appropriately? And then segregation of duties is just due to lack of size of your organization, the number of individuals in your accounting and financial reporting function. So we design our procedures to reduce our risk those areas to be low risk. Significant accounting practices. So was there any big changes? Significant accounting policies, no new standards to implement this year. So no changes there. You don't really have any significant accounting estimates in your financial statements, so nothing really there to address. Financial statement disclosures, and this is where we would communicate anything particularly sensitive or requiring significant judgment in the disclosures in the financial statements. No real changes in your financial statement disclosures between years. Significant difficulties encountered during the audit. We did not have any. Management, again, very cooperative in the process, and we appreciate that. And then probably the main thing that everybody's concerned with, did we have any adjustments or any past adjustments? And we did not have any adjustments to the financial statements. So that means that the financial statements that you're receiving on an interim basis can be very reliable. We did not have to make any adjustments to those financial statements.
Made a few reclassifications for reporting purposes, primarily just for presentation purposes in the financial statements to show some things separately, but other than that, no changes, very clean. And then certain communications between management and our firm, we do have a request management to provide us with a management representation letter. That is available upon request if you want that. And then when I talk about new accounting policies, so there are some new standards that are coming out that will affect next year's audit. Accounting for compensated absences and then certain risk disclosures. So we'll have some conversations with management, discussions, and provide guidance to them so they can implement those into the 2025 financial statement. As far as, so that's our required communication. So now I'll just hit on to audit report highlights. So as I said, we did have our opinion on the financial statements presented fairly. So we had an unmodified or referred to as a clean audit opinion. We do in our independent auditors report on some other matters. You have required supplementary information, which is not part of the basic financial statements, but required by GASB to accompany the financial statements. You have the management discussion analysis, and then your budgetary comparison schedule. And one of the compliance things we look at with the budgetary comparison schedule is that did actual results exceed or were they under budget? And so you did not exceed your budgeted amounts. And then you have other supplementary information, and our procedures related to those are, is the supplementary information fairly stated in relation to the basic financial statements? And you have some combining financial statement schedules in the supplementary information for your non-major governmental fund, that's your official expense fund, and then your scheduled expenditure of federal awards, which contains those amounts that you expend over 750 that requires the audit in accordance with uniform guidance. And so now we'll touch on that part, our reporting in accordance with government auditing standards and the uniform guidance. So we did not have any findings associated with government auditing standards. And again, that was internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations. So no reportable matters there. Reportable matters in accordance with the uniform guidance and the compliance with the major program requirements. And we did not have any reportable matters there. Your total federal awards expended amounted to $3.1 million. So that's your federal funds in your scheduled expenditure of federal awards. You had amounts passed through to subrecipients of about $900,000. The major program that we tested is the Highway Planning and Construction Cluster. That's a system listing 20.2005. That is about 50% of your total federal awards. Our uniform guidance audits for a low-risk auditee are required to encompass at least 20% of your federal awards expended. If you're a high-risk auditee, it would be 40%. You guys are a low-risk auditee, so it was only 20% was required. But either way, that program would have covered the low-risk or the high-risk requirement. And then we will work on submitting your audit to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and get that reporting package done. You have to have that done within 30 days of the audit report date, which was yesterday. So we'll get that done here in the next couple of weeks. Included with that will be the summary schedule of prior audit findings. Last year, we had a significant deficiency in internal control over compliance. That was resolved. Management put some procedures in place to resolve that. But that summary schedule of prior audit findings will be included in that reporting package, communicated to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse that that finding has been resolved and no longer is out. Any questions?
I just got one, the last page or page 41. What is highway planning and construction cluster, highway planning and construction, federal aid highway program?
So that is one of the federal grants that you get, and that is the major program, the federal grant that we tested during the year. So that's just that's the name. That program falls under the cluster in the OMB compliance supplement. And so it's audited, it's referred to as a cluster because there's other grants under that cluster that are included. And so that program is the program that we tested.
So is that a score, 20.20?
No, that's the federal financial assistance listing on the sam.gov website. Every federal grant has a listing number. So that's what that is. It's just an identification number, but it's required to be included in the schedule of financial question costs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, every federal grant has a number like that, the 5-digit number. So the 20 is the agency. So The 20 is Department of Transportation. Every Department of Transportation grant starts with a 20. And every federal agency has a different number. Like Health and Human Services starts with 93. HUD starts with 14. They all have it. It's just a identifying number because what those are. Good question.
Well, they're getting rid of some of those departments. Nobody's playing a check.
Maybe, yeah, we may have a reduction in numbers in that list. Correct.
Any further questions for
Any other
Darren? If not, Matt, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to call attention that Darren was reporting on his audit, the action item for today to approve our financial statements. And I just wanted to go over just a little detail, and give an opportunity to ask anything on the financial statements themselves. He's just told you that they're correct. Now you may like or not like what you see, so let's take a quick look. If you look on page 11 of the financial statements, I think it's a good document to start with. That's the statement of activities. It kind of gives you an overview of what we're spending our money on. And you can also see towards the bottom of that page, you can see where we started. So it would have been the end of year last year and where we ended up. And so we call that net position. Net position is essentially like a balance sheet equity position, all kind of rolled into government speak, if you will. So you can see that we didn't change much in governmental activities in our, for lack of a better term, the agency's net value, if you will. And then, but then you can see in the business type activities, we dropped about 500,000. And so our net position ended up being a little around, well, minus 452,000 on net. And I've talked to Mike about this too. The main reason for that was because of I guess it's really the cash flow of our aerial photography contract that we have, where we support our members, our jurisdictions in their needs for aerial photography. We manage the contract. Well, we pay the contractor according to their financing terms, but we don't necessarily align reimbursement from our jurisdictions at that same point. So if there's any lag in being reimbursed from them, that ends up showing as a deficit for MAPA. So that was about the lion's share of that 450,000 was due to just that financing timing of cutting off at our end of our fiscal year. So, and you'll see that dollar amount or about that dollar amount throughout. But so that would be the only thing I would say that would just be slightly out of the ordinary for what you might be looking for. But if you have any other questions, by any means, by all means, let me know. If you move on over to page 13, that's our income statement, if you will. And this kind of shows our again, the areas that when we show you our budget, and there is a page for the budget too, I think page 29, we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see these are our large program categories of what we're spending our funds. You can see that general funds, non-major, very little that we do in the non-major capacity. And then again, you'll see down below, you'll see our net change in fund balances, total government funds. There's that $400 and some thousand, all tied really to the same scenario I explained about aerial photography payments. There are no questions on that page. I'll move on to
Successive years of $500,000 losses.
What's that?
2 successive years of almost $500,000 loss. Is that concerning to you? I understand timing, but
yeah, I mean, we have to track that. I mean, we have to know what the reason is, and that's why I try to explain. This was a kind of a push-pull because of the financing arrangements we allowed our members who were taking advantage of this aerial photography master contract. Can we do that every year? No. But what will happen now, because they will pay later, we will actually receive more revenue than we will have in aerial photography expense in subsequent years. So it'll end up being a slingshot. We'll get more revenue from those entities paying for something they already received in the subsequent year, but then we won't have as many expenses because they've already paid, or they're not not every member gets aerial photography footage every year. They'll do it 1 year, they'll skip a year or something. But we allow them to spread their payments out every year. So we don't do that with the vendor because it's too hard to track. We're losing tracking deliverables by allowing them to just charge us in installments. So we wanted to go to direct cost.
I misspoke, I looked at the headings wrong, I thought they were, it was trending.
Yeah, and this is the nature of, this was the first year of that new contract, and because some local jurisdictions for budgeting purposes wanted to pay for those flights over 2 years or 3 years, it will have this sort of distorting effect on that line item on our financial statements, but
Yeah, the main, and we've talked about this before, because we're not an appropriation-based entity, we essentially have to cut off business on that date, and so we will have some years where we're below and some years where we're way ahead. So we have to track cash flow, quite a bit. That's why we track that on a monthly basis, to make sure that we can float a $400,000 structural deficit at the end of the year. And which we have, because we're still here. So, excuse me. If there are no other questions on that, I want to just quickly jump to 29, which is our budget execution. So on this page is what the board approved in FY, it would have been May of 2023. And then the budget final would have been in May of 2024, when we were trying to true up closer to what we were going to finish out for the year. So it's a modification. So budget original was right before the year started, budget final was right before the year ended. And then the actual amounts of revenues and expenditures. And you can see again there, charges for services is quite low, right? Because we couldn't recognize the revenue until, because it was not within 60 days for modified accrual purposes. In fact, some of those funds still haven't been received based on our very flexible financing arrangements for our jurisdiction. But anyway, so you can see that as explaining the charges for services are less than we predicted, because we really just didn't know when those deliverables were going to hit. And we hadn't actually had all the contracts signed with our jurisdictions about creating the financing arrangements.
and I would just note, like, the nature of this is the flights occur in March. And if the company is able to process all that imagery and get it back to MAPA, get it back to the jurisdictions before June 30th, we recognize that expense in this fiscal year. If they were 2 days later, we'd recognize it in the next year. And so we're really at the mercy of those deliverables, and that's why they did a great job of delivering the imagery very, very quickly, more quickly than they have in the past, and it had this net effect to really kind of show this increased number this year. So they performed well on their first year of their contract. Now we know what to expect.
So is this one entity, the 66424, or is that a couple different?
You're talking the net changes in fund balance? The third row from the bottom, Matt, on.
Right. So
Is
what you have,
that one entity or several?
no, that would be more than one entity. But the vast majority of that is this pictometry.
Right, so
Time,
then
yeah.
what are the others, 30, 60, 90, 180 days out, what are we looking at?
Yeah, and some of that is structural, because we have funds that we carry over from year to year. So it might be a multi-year project, right? And we may have received an advance of $100,000 from one of the communities. And we haven't spent down on that project. Those funds were received, say, 2 years ago. So they were shown in the financial statements from 2 years ago as revenue. But now they're just sitting in our bank account, collecting interest until we can actually use them for the project. Well, when we spend those funds 2 years later, it looks like an expenditure with no corresponding revenue. This is again, I wouldn't say a problem, but this is the nuance with not being appropriations based. We don't encumber funds into a new year and then reclassify them as a new year's revenue or a new year's available fund. We operate very much like a business structure.
But there would potentially be 4 names here with 4 different amounts that add up to that.
Right. Well, this particular document doesn't have the drill down of all the different.
I get that, but I'd just be curious of how far out some of those are. Are they 6 months out?
Some of them still have about, I would have to get, Carlos up here to predict which projects are going to end when, but they could be another year out before we spend all those funds. Again, we already have the money. That's the reason. Once we spend whatever that project cost is, 2 or 3 years after we receive the funds, that's when that expense becomes, that's when it drags down, it drags down on that deficit because there's no, in that year, no corresponding revenue to offset it. Because we already received the revenue.
But don't those project costs go up?
No, it's a function of the contract. So we may have, when we execute an agreement with a consultant, so we executed in April and we received the match. Not usually. No, we scope things down more than we increase it. That's kind of been our pattern. But I would say it's really a matter of timing. When we execute that consultant contract, whatever match is required for that, if the local government is required to contribute that for the project, we receive all of that in that fiscal year. If the project takes 18 months to complete, what Matt's alluding to is that there's no new revenue in that year to associate with that cost because it's carried over. And so it's not an increase or a new outlay. It's really a matter of timing where we would have shown revenues that we didn't spend in one year, and now we're showing expenses that have no revenue in the next. And that's really the nature and the function of why it's difficult to sometimes ascertain exactly all these line items, but it's a good question.
In a different local government, which I assume are dues, it would appear somebody's 95,000 in arrears. Is that current now?
No, I don't think so. So yeah, that would have been, again, the cutoff, right? So we would have, or it could have just been what we were estimating. Yes, local governments do include dues, it includes tip fees, it includes some funds that come in that we don't necessarily expect to receive, but just because of the vagaries of just doing business with local governments. But typically, yes, it's tip fees and local dues. So we had an original budget. You can see that we marked it way down, and I don't even remember why that was. Oh, it's because we knew what the tip fees were at that point, right? So we estimate a certain amount at the beginning of the year, and then when court comes in and gives us either good news or bad news, it's higher or lower than that number, and then we adjust. So and so then when we got the actual amounts, that was probably, as you said, it was probably funds that did not make the cutoff, and so we had to carry that back to school. And so again, you see then the fund balance shows we were expecting expenditures are actually lower than we expected, but our revenue was also much lower. So we didn't overspend on the budget. We just didn't receive the funds we felt that we received in that year by June 30th. So I guess that's basically what I wanted to articulate there. And so if you have any more questions, that would be my last page.
Any questions or discussion? Scott, did you want a list of those of the breakdown on that they could provide maybe either through email or whatever? Can you do that, Matt?
Yeah, I'll have my staff here.
So,
Sure.
Any further questions or discussion on this? All right, thank you, Matt. Would I have a motion to approve the financial statements for 2024? And if there's no further questions or discussion, Liz?
Belt. Yeah.
Yes.
Height.
Back up to one.
Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh. Winquist. Yes. Kindig.
Yes. Now the real number one, the purchase. The board will consider for approval, the purchase listed below. Item A is the Coley Jessen Employment-Based Immigration Legal Services for $6,095.
And so back in December, MAPA, we, through our interlocal agreement, retain most of our general counsel through the city of Omaha, who provides us with legal services, mostly on contracting, assistance with, open meetings related things. But one thing that we've been facing here as staff is a number of more issues related to people's immigration status and visas. And we were encouraged to retain outside counsel for that. And what you see here in the packet is 4 firms that we evaluated for these services. Our recommendation is proceeding with Coley Jessen largely in terms of the actual clarity in terms of what the cost will be for these visa-related services, and kind of pursuing that in this year for one of our employees. And so with that, this contract would allow us to move forward with that in this session to kind of continue that sponsorship activity, and really hopefully retain them for longer than they currently are authorized to work in the United States. And so you see here, these 4 firms, we went out and talked to 4 firms. One of them indicated they don't do employment-based services, but the other 3 were comparable. The specificity of the fees was really what drove us to this one.
Questions or discussion on that?
So is this something you would have to do for individual employees? Potentially on an annual basis?
Not on an annual basis, no. And so we have,
Get a new employee,
correct.
you gotta do this, yeah?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, if it's something we want to pursue, we're under no obligation to do it. But this is with the nature of the employment that we've engaged. It's a kind of a specialized position, and so it's something where we see some value in it. It's something that we'd be evaluating on a case-by-case basis. But it is a new area too, and just even having that consultation and being able to talk through what our options are as an employer, that's really kind of the starting point on this for us. But yes, the full scope of fees here, if we move forward with that visa sponsorship, really are laid out here really clearly. Those kind of initial consults and the other pieces are where we would be weighing that.
So how many hours was it?
It's a flat fee. It's not an hourly basis. It could. I don't think it would, but.
Flat fee basis, like each one we discussed, third firm that, charge billed hourly. And so just looking at several different immigration firms, the flat fees more consistent. And it also allowed us to have a better idea of what those costs may be versus, an hourly basis. And not, talking anywhere from $300, $500, $600 an hour. So with the flat attorney fee of $1,500, it allows us to have a good estimate of what that will cost.
It wasn't 1,500, it was $6,000.
Correct.
There's that, yeah.
The breakout of the fees in that middle column.
At the federal level, and then the attorney fee is the flat $1,500 fee that you see here, and then currently it's $2,200 flat rate, whereas Bear Home would bill hourly for their services.
Well, that should be going down in price rather than going up.
Yeah, I don't know if the Byzantine nature of the federal government makes anything easier, but
It does.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But yes, so our recommendation was Coley Jessen, and would take any more question or comment.
Would I have a motion for approval? Is there further discussion or questions? Liz?
Bell.
Aye.
Garcia. Height.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. And Dick.
Yes. Item 3, correct? Are we on item 3?
now? Yep, you're on item 3. This will be Carlos and then Grant.
Oh, boy. Okay, item 3 is new contracts, grant and task orders. Carlos?
Good afternoon. This is the 3-day streetlight data contract. This is a 1-year contract to investigate big data component. Basically, as part of our work, we have to develop a travel demand model. What we want to use this data for is fill in the gaps in the areas of our region where we don't take traffic counts. So this is using big data, and I talked about big data, cell phones, YouTube, etc. Aggregated, modeled up, to fill in the gaps where we currently do not take traffic, right? So this is supplemental data that we use to fill up traffic and it's a 1-year contract to see how this system works and integrates with our travel man model. It's for $137,701.04. Again, it's a 1-year thing. And we're seeking recommendation to the board.
Any questions or discussion for Carlos?
This says street light data,
Correct.
are we talking stoplights?
No, that's just the name of the company.
What are we talking about?
So it is a big data provider. So it's a company that aggregates data from a number of different sources, whether it's cell phone, Bluetooth, as Carlos alluded to, and provides essentially mapping software that lets you take existing traffic counts that you already receive and then filling gaps within that. And so for our travel demand model, where we're trying to say where traffic will be moving in the future, those traffic counts are kind of the underpinning part of that.
So are they going outside the communities, or are they doing the whole county?
It is a software product. So for the whole county, Carlos, the TASs are just for the MPO area, correct? So out to kind of McClelland. So McClelland, Carter Lake, Crescent would be kind of that arc that we talk about with the TMA.
South,
Mills County line.
just to the water.
Yeah, so Mills County is not part of our urban transportation area. So all of Douglas County, all of Sarpy County, and then the urbanized part of Potawatomi County.
Any other questions of Carlos? If it's okay with the board, I'll take both of these together. If you want to present number 2, Carlos,
It'll be Grant on that one.
or Grant on
Yeah.
that one.
So we're proposing to submit a $50,000 USDA application, implement a training and education program called the Retail Academy to Glenwood and Plattsmouth. If awarded, the funds would be used to contract for a retail, recruitment consultant who would deliver the academy's curriculum to those 2 communities. This was an opportunity that was identified last year throughout some planning collaborative meetings that we had with Mills and Cass counties. MAPA, as a regional governmental organization, is eligible to apply, so it made more sense for us to apply on behalf of 2 communities rather than to apply themselves. So the request being made is that MAPA board approve this authorizing resolution, which is just a requirement of this particular grant program. I know that the board passes a resolution annually that gives Mike certain authority to enter into different contracts, grant agreements for a variety of federal and state agencies, but this was just a specific requirement to this one proposal. So unless anyone has any questions, that's the request.
Anything for Grant? If not, I would take a motion to approve 3A and B.
Second.
And if there's no further questions or discussion, Liz?
Bell. Garcia. Height. Rowe.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Wentworth. Yes. And Big.
Yes. Item number 4 is a resolution for the 2025-15 US DOT Draft National Multimedia Freight Network. Jim?
Thank you very much. The National Multimodal Freight Network is a planning network that's first directed in MAPA 21, at which time they put together a draft version, really kind of a lot of quiet until past April, where they reached out to states and MPOs and other stakeholders to get guidance on methodologies, thresholds, ways of collecting information, and acknowledging that we don't have a good national database where this is local kind of rate work is done, and it has both local and national importance. So we're following on a second currently open Federal Register request for information, which is basically approval of this draft intermodal freight network using a set of scores. So to separate it from the National Highway Freight Network, the National Highway Freight Network identifies roadways where federal transportation dollars can be spent. This does not. This is just a planning network. It does take a little bit different look than the current highway freight network. So I think what's unique is it's not just roadways. It did take a look at rail, marine ports, waterways, and airports. Within our region, the only network segments identified were on the highways and the rail. We do have a couple intermodal facilities I'll show in a minute. really Epley Airfield didn't bubble up through the numbers that they crunched in 2022, looking at the 2023 numbers would. So NDOT is looking to request that airport be added to the network itself. So big picture, the area shown in green is this national multimodal freight network. Basically the interstate system along with a couple of roadways that I'll zoom in here on the next slide. What is unique in this instance is it also looks at the strategic highway network or the STRONet, and that extends some roadways down to Offutt Air Force Base. So 75 south of I-80, and then actually a small portion of Harlan, zoom in here, Harlan Drive, are added to this network just to provide access to that military facility. So I guess working around the clock from 9 o'clock, 13th Street to the BNSF Intermodal Facility. That's also an area that we've identified and is kind of on our freight network. Well, the area that we have work to do, when we did talk with the city of Omaha, there's some legacy roadway networks identified, 13th and 14th Street, 11th and Lizard. And so there's some development patterns that are going on there that those might not be roadways in the future. We do have the opportunity here soon to work with the departments of transportation to make changes, and they're already aware that we are looking to do that. We also, again, as we talked about last month, are very excited about kicking off our freight study here in the coming months this year, such that we can really take a deep dive into how freight impacts our region. And then finally, the Iowa Interstate Railroad Intermodal Facility. Just really high level, there are some data points that are coming in. Again, just talking about that big data, there's some traffic measuring, so truck counts current, and then some prediction systems that are done at the national level for modeling. We're interested in, we're looking at those. And then again, I talked about the airport. We are curious to see if they'll allow us to use the updated data from 2023 and bring Epley on.
Is that like for flights landed or people?
There's two criteria that it has to do with freight and mail, and there's a one that combines both of them, and one that just looks at freight standalone. Is how
You said freight and mail?
freight and mail.
So
yes.
nothing out of the military, what they're doing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. And so finally, the request from this federal register was for us to give them a look. That's why we had the conversation about urbanized areas where these roadways interact with other uses. Alternative routes, we think those are generally captured through our existing intermodal facilities, or at least that are measured at the national level. And then values and volumes, commodity flow. So this is something that does come out fairly regularly. Again, another big data set that we're looking to make better use of. Keynote there is they're finally releasing that data at the county level. Typically it would be aggregated at a much higher level, so it's harder to have a conversation about impacts to individual counties. And so we're excited to understand that a little bit better. But really it allows for the opportunity for recommendations through the Departments of Transportation. TTAC gave a formal recommendation, and staff recommends approving the national multimodal freight network as provided, and then again acknowledging the open and DOT request hopefully for Epley Airfield, and to continue working with our Department of Transportation friends to make changes in the future.
Any further questions for Jim? If not, thank you. Can I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve it all.
Second.
If there's no further questions? Liz?
Bell.
Aye.
Garcia.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Blue. Hartsrow.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Winquist. Yes. Kivnick.
Yes. Agenda item K, do any of the board members have anything they would like to discuss? And there, I don't see any additional business. I will mention the council of officials meeting is March 12th at 11 a.m. at the Mattress Factory. And who's going to be the speaker?
Sure, it's Ross Van Dengen from Accelerator for America. They're a organization that works nationally to connect local governments with really funding and technical assistance around economic development and transportation. And, he's somebody who's been assisting us on some of our thriving communities type of work. He presented at our national conference. And so we're asking him that on March 12th, he give us the lay of the land of the federal government, whatever that may be. And so kind of give us whatever updated timely information we can get on both kind of those two topics. And so I think it'll be a valuable update if you're interested, and encourage you to bring you or your senior staff.
Excellent. With that, I call the meeting adjourned. Everybody have a safe time and enjoy the warm weather while we got it.